Hi, this is Steve Hargadon, and we are actually almost toward the end of our third day of the Global Education Conference, this amazing event. We're so grateful to have you here. This has really been a fun day. I'm seeing another chat about the slide. I'm glad to fix that. Randi Weingarten is here, and she is the president of the American Federation of Teachers, and she's one of 28 keynotes and over 425 sessions over the course of these 5 days, and we're really delighted to have her here. Randi, are you there?
I am.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Steve, for having us.
Thanks to our conference sponsors this year, there's been a huge amount of support and a great deal of support and enthusiasm for the conference, and we really appreciate those organizations that have provided us with that enthusiasm and support. Especially IRON for the great work that they've done and the ways in which they've helped to sort of co-run the conference this year. This is a chance for those of you who are participating to indicate where you're participating from. Look for the star to the left of the map. And you want to click on that twice, and then you'll click on the map. We do know that another keynote is just finishing, and it can take people a few minutes to switch gears. So as additional people come in the room, please welcome them in the chat. And I am in Washington, D.C. this week, which is not my normal territory, but it's been really nice here. Well, it would help if I actually gave you permissions there. Now you should see the star to the left of the map. Lucy Gray is here. Lucy, I've made you a moderator. Feel free to jump in at any point. Peggy's saying she can barely keep her breath moving from session to session. Well, maybe no surprise this is a U.S.-centric audience. We're certainly glad to have you here. So now I know there was an interest in having another slide put up, and I'm going to go to this page right now. And Heidi or Larry, if you'd like to load another slide, you can do so right at this point, hitting the Load Content button. What I'm going to do right now is turn the time over to Heidi Glidden, who is going to introduce Randi formally. And Heidi, do you have a microphone? Because I'm not hearing you. Oh, gotcha. So, Randi, are you going to do without a formal introduction?
Steve, can you hear me?
Oh, there you are. Yes. Hi, Heidi.
And let's see. All right, we're going to use Randi through my name, Heidi Glidden. So she is on. For some reason, one of our computers has we have the backup. So why don't we get started? So when you hear, if you see anything, okay, sorry about that, guys.
Okay, Heidi, there are no apologies.
We are going to, so Randi's going to be using my name, which is Heidi Glidden, and so that we can then talk to each other. I think we've got the mic turned off. I think we're good. Sorry about that. So good afternoon from Washington, D.C. I am Heidi Glidden with the American Federation of Teachers, and I will be moderating the session, Innovation, Collaboration, Shared Responsibility, a teacher recipe for high-performing schools, with Randi Weingarten, President of the American Federation of Teachers. We will be taking questions at the end of Randi's talk, so please feel free to enter them into your chat window whenever you want, and we'll get to as many of them as we can at the end. The American Federation of Teachers is very excited to be a part of this unique conference event. Every day there are incredible stories about amazing educators who are working to improve the lives of their students and to strengthen their communities in every corner of the globe. And we're proud of our partnerships with IEARN and other international education and labor organizations who are advocating tirelessly for the education of all children. I'm pleased to introduce your speaker for the session, Randi Weingarten. Randi is currently the president of the AFT, and she's the voice for the more than 1.5 million members of the AFT and of the students, parents, and community members that we all serve. Prior to being elected president, Randi was the president of the AFT's largest local, the United Federation of Teachers, which is the New York City local. And Randi is also a former social studies teacher, so she knows not only from her membership, but from firsthand experience the numerous issues and the great rewards facing those professionals who have chosen the education profession. So, Randi, welcome to the Global Education Conference.
Thank you, Heidi, for that gracious introduction, and also thank you for all the work that you have done, not only for the AFT, but I feel like we've had you since childhood do incredible work with teachers all across America, including a lot of the work we'll talk about with Share My Lesson. So really thank you, and thank you, Steve, and thank you all of you, particularly IEARN, and for all the work that you do and for inviting us to participate in this global assembly. So it's my pleasure to be looking at a computer screen and talking to people in India and China, in Brooklyn and Bayshore, in Bangalore, and everywhere in between, to be virtually with so many people from around the globe. We at the AFT have had a history of international work, from supporting trade unions to in emerging democracies, to leadership in Education International, to sponsoring the first 2 international education summits. But this is new, and this is amazingly wonderful to have this kind of connection to educators and parents and people who understand how important education is in this virtual way. I and many of my colleagues at the American Federation of Teachers have visited lots of schools in lots of countries. Our focus in the last couple of years has been to look at the high-performing education systems around the world, in Finland, in Ontario, Canada, in Singapore, in Shanghai, to name a few. And so many of these visits, to the different continents and countries, what's funny is that we heard that a lot of the practices that were emulated, that became so successful on a systemic basis, were practices that people got from the United States of America. It shows how connected we are, but now how we must really focus on that which works and how to scale it, sustain it, and scale it up throughout the world. So we've gone around the world looking for approaches that work, and as I said, found that many of the great ideas that are succeeding were exported from America. But unfortunately, too many of those ideas no longer have any resonance with the policymakers in America, even though they have tremendous resonance with parents and teachers in the United States. So what we're thinking about in the U.S. is not only how to get back to our best practices, how to learn from top-performing countries so that we can reach new heights, but what are those best practices so that whether we're using them, advocating for them, and using them in the United States or other countries, what have we learned? And we've learned 5 things. Number 1, preparing teachers has to be a priority. High-performing countries prepare teachers the way the United States prepares doctors and lawyers, with extensive practical clinical training. Teacher preparation includes a wide variety of teaching and classroom experience because, after all, we have to actually differentiate the needs of all kids within our reach. Candidates who qualify to train as teachers in some of these places like Finland and Singapore, they have their education paid for, so they don't have the issue about whether or not they will be able to afford to be a school teacher. And once in the profession, teachers are provided in these countries that outperform the United States with ongoing professional development and opportunities to meet their colleagues, including, in some ways, something that was started in Japan, lesson study, which we imported to the United States, or Japan exported to us. So number 1 was preparing teachers as must be a priority. Number 2, and the countries of the world that outcompete us know this, teaching is a valued profession. Societies that value education also value educators. The public then has confidence in educators. They enjoy not just esteem, but a stature that befits the role that educators have to do, which is essentially to nurture, support, and enable the next generation of those in our countries. And so when teaching is a valued profession, when teachers are giving the support that they need as opposed to fight for value, then that's one step closer to a society actually having a great education system. We've seen that around the world. Number 3, equity, equity, equity. Sometimes we talk about this as poverty, but when we talk about equity, this is our business, our work. This is for all children, not some children. And that means we have to make sure that all kids have the opportunity to receive an excellent education. We have to enable opportunity for all. Successful systems ensure that all children are ready to learn and to succeed. They have wraparound services, community involvement, social services. That's what we mean when we say that education is a shared responsibility, a community responsibility. But it's not just throwing resources. It's high-performing countries target resources and strategies to mitigate the effects of inequity or the effects of poverty. Finland, for example, specially trained teachers are assigned to students who are struggling. Canada ensures that immigrant students get specialized support. And we've seen some of these practices even in the United States, like in the Cincinnati school system, where we have wraparound services in virtually every elementary school and schools that are really community centers. So, number 1, preparing teachers is a priority. Number 2, teaching is a valued profession. Number 3, we really focus the high-performing school systems and nations focus on equity. Number 4 and number 5, curriculum. It's really important who is teaching, but it is equally important what is being taught. High-performing countries provide a rich, well-rounded education. They set high standards, and there is local autonomy as well as teacher autonomy about how you get there. But there are high standards and lots of different curriculum materials that are linked to those high standards. So if we're actually really teaching mathematics, we actually teach kids to think about lots of different ways to get to the answer. That's what we learned in Japan. That's what we've learned from our colleagues, and that's what we're starting to see in systems that are effective in the United States as well as effective in different places. But it's not just mathematics and English. As I have often said, a kid that takes music in school doesn't drop out of school. A kid who is engaged in art understands why school becomes important. A student who has been sparked by robotics sees what's important about that and starts thinking about STEM in a whole different, science, technology, engineering, and math in a whole different way. And so while many American education policies seem intent on creating a nation of test takers, in every high-performing country we visited, teachers regularly wove art, music, science, and other disciplines into their lessons. And the last of these 5 things that we saw that are characteristics of high-performing education systems here and in the United States and abroad is collaboration. Because you can have all the best strategies on paper, but if we don't have time, teachers don't have time to meet with their colleagues, to work together, to create a school-wide collaborative approach that fosters student success, then any money in the world or strategy in the world is not going to work. That we are, and we need technology, but we are a people profession, and we work together with each other and with parents and with administrators in order to do our jobs. And the countries that understand that and the school districts and schools that understand that do far better than those that don't. So those are the 5 kind of ingredients, but I will actually mention one more, which is that in both the United States and abroad, education and the economy are wrapped together. One can't be strong if the other is not. And in these ongoing tough economic times, many American school systems have made severe cuts to education. And the immediate effects of those cuts, in some ways it's the educational equivalent of eating our own seed corn. The immediate effects have been damaging to children and our country for years. And so instead of though complaining about it, we are doing a whole bunch of things. Educating students in a time of austerity is far from our only challenge. Rather than following evidence about what works, many education officials chase fads and impose reforms lacking any evidence of effectiveness. And as I said before, all of this gets tested incessantly. So the bottom line is, I could spend a lot of time saying all those things are bad, but that's not what our union chooses to do. What we choose to do is to move away from the finger pointing, away from the polarization, and be clear about our challenges, but advance solutions to help our students and our public schools succeed and our communities thrive. So instead of just complaining about that which doesn't work, and frankly, simply advocating from on high about that which we think will work, what we do instead is we'll complain about what doesn't work, we'll advocate about what does work, but we'll also actually propose on the ground solutions that will work even in times of austerity. And we call that solution-driven unionism. Solution-driven unionism is rooted in solving problems, not winning arguments. We know that this tough climate with increasing poverty, deep budget cuts, attacks on unions and public services, it can't stop us from having a proactive quality education agenda. And in fact, this time demands it more than any other time, and I think you also saw that in terms of the election results in the United States this month. So what we're trying to do is devise innovative, creative, and new approaches to help all children succeed. And one of the ways we're doing things is spearheading this new technology platform, which we call Share My Lesson, and you'll see how it fits into the 5 points that we saw internationally are characteristics of high-performing schools and school systems. Share My Lesson. Teachers are being asked, as I've said before, to do so much these days, often because of the budget cuts, with fewer resources, and also because of budget cuts, with less time to meet with each other. So it's both less materials, less stuff, less tools, and less time to meet with each other, and at the same time, them being blamed for things that don't work, and at the same time, being told that we have to actually help kids apply knowledge, not just know things. All of that is happening at the same time. So Share My Lesson is an online community that provides free access to educators' best ideas and resources whenever and wherever teachers need them. In some way, just like this kind of virtual conversation now, it is a desktop which brings together a lot of great ideas virtually in one place so that teachers can use them and to build on them and to actually download their own great ideas. The AFT and our partner Test Connect developed Share My Lesson to provide a platform for teachers to share with and learn from their fellow educators. So when teachers need ideas or resources any time of day or night, they can log on using a simple search, get exactly what they need, and Share My Lesson is not simply by teachers and for teachers, it is free of charge. Share My Lesson categorizes teacher-created resources by grade level, subject, and type of resources, such as a video or a lesson plan. It also gives teachers access to many ways to differentiate instruction so they can meet the needs of their students. Already, more than 100,000 people have registered to use Share My Lesson, and that's only since we've launched it in July officially. And it is available to educators across the globe. You can sign up at www.sharemylesson.com. I'm going to say it again, www.sharemylesson.com. Now, remember I said it's part of what we see in lots of these high-performing districts and nation states. Why do I say that? Because one of the key points in American education these days is how do we help kids, equip kids with the knowledge and skills so that they apply knowledge, so that they don't just memorize things or know things, but they can critically think, they can actually tell us how they get to answers. We call that, in our parlance, the common core. And what we wanted to do is, particularly in this austerity time, in this time when districts across the United States are cutting materials and cutting time for teachers to learn, at the very same time as they need this time together to master these instructional shifts that are needed to change our strategy to align it with the Common Core, they don't have it. So this resource, this online platform, is trying to align a lot of what's there with the Common Core. Because we know these standards, if implemented right, have the potential to help students acquire the subject knowledge, the deep understanding, and the skills to apply concepts that will prepare them for college, career, and life. But if teachers don't have the tools or the preparation they need to meet these instructional challenges because of the budget cuts or inadequate implementation, then kids actually are hurt twice because they don't have their current curriculum and the teachers are not prepared for the new curriculum. Share My Lesson helps fill some of this vacuum by enabling educators to draw on this rich bank of lessons that are aligned to the Common Core standards. We created this platform, TES and us. We spent a lot of money creating it. But bottom line, it is an educator platform. It's for educators to use, to build on, not only to ensure that their students learn and grow, but also we know that when teachers are lifelong learners, teachers are better at their craft. That's what teachers want. Share My Lesson is a place where teachers' needs and their colleagues' solutions interact, helping students get the great education they deserve, helping teachers succeed and stay in our wonderful but demanding profession. I often say it is one of these things that I wish was around when I was a social studies teacher at Clara Barton High School in Brooklyn, New York. It is a way to take our profession and put it into our own hands. Another thing that high-performing countries do, a way of valuing teachers and of preparing them for this noble pursuit. And I just want to show a bit of a video now about Share My Lesson.
So Heidi, this is my
Steve, we're ready for the video.
Right?
notification.
Yes.
So I'm putting in the link that we used before.
Where do we find the link? But the link's not working.
Is there any reason
Where do I
that
find
would
the
have changed in the meantime? So I'm hoping Heidi will put the link in the chat in case for some reason I got it wrong, but I cut and pasted it and we used it before.
Well, we may just go without the video. Okay. All right, sorry about that. I don't think we're actually going to be able to show the video because we have that loaded on the other computer. We're going to maybe try once more. Nope, it's not coming up. I don't think we're coming up there. Maybe we can't get the link over here.
So I have one alternative here.
If we get the video, we'll play it.
Right. So we'll keep going, and if we can bring the video up, we will. So we can go back to the whiteboard, please. Thank you.
So Heidi and Randy.
Even with trying to make sure every time we test, this is why we actually need human beings and not simply technology, because it doesn't always work. So we're going to try to see if we can get Share My Lesson, but let me just talk about 2 or 3 other things, and then I just want to open it up for questions if we can. As I said, there's lots of, are you getting it or no?
No.
Okay. So, as I said before, we think that Share My Lesson, which you haven't yet seen, but now you'll go to the website, www.sharemylesson.com. We think that Share My Lesson is an important step towards teacher ownership of our profession. We also think it actually has some of the attributes of what we've seen in high-performing countries, such as helping to prepare teachers more, helping by having teacher autonomy to create a different status in terms of the teaching profession, finding a way to actually do more collaboration, and finding a way to have the kind of high-quality curriculum, and also by having it in terms of this platform that is for free, trying to deal with some of the equity issues. So it does actually hit each of the 5 attributes of a high-performing, of what we see in high-performing countries. But a website is not the only thing that is needed to create high-performing education systems. And I just want to actually focus on a couple of other strategies that I think are important. Not that each of these strategies in and of themselves will be the nirvana, the silver bullet, but I think that they are important working in tandem. So number 1, children's health and well-being has to be a focus. Struggling communities have to be helped. This is when we talk about educating kids, this is an all, not a sum. And that means, and when I say sum, I don't mean S-U-M, I mean S-O-M-E. If we're really serious about helping all kids, then we have to have strategies that do so. And that starts with family engagement, and it starts with things like ensuring that kids have the kind of wraparound services that they need. And so the AFT is working with a number of districts to provide students and their families access to wraparound services, including health and mental health services, tutoring, counseling services, and after-school programs. The community schools effort in Cincinnati, for example, shows what can be achieved when providing these kinds of supports. Student mobility, which can be so disruptive to a kid's education, is down. Discipline referrals have dropped sharply in Cincinnati, and that helps keep kids in schools learning. And student achievement has risen dramatically. But Cincinnati is not the only place where we're doing this. Solution-driven unionism also means forging partnerships in other places around the country. And so what we've tried to do in a place like McDowell County, West Virginia, is to unite our members with the people they serve and the community where they work and live. McDowell County, West Virginia is one of the poorest counties in the United States of America. And the AFT, because we are the largest union in West Virginia, and plus we had done a lot of work on teaching and learning, we were asked to assist in helping the McDowell education challenges. McDowell was a county, or is a county that has been controlled by its state board of education for 10 years. But what we saw is that McDowell's education challenges are inseparable from many of the other problems affecting the region. And so the AFT assembled more than 100 partners, not only to improve the quality of education provided to kids in the county, but to focus on jobs, transportation, recreation, housing, healthcare, and social services. Since we started, we have witness to the first new housing, and we started about a year ago next month, the first new housing in McDowell County in over 2 decades. We hope that this comprehensive approach will serve as a model that can be used to benefit other high-needs communities. Okay, we're going to try the video one more time and share my lesson.
No. Maybe. We're going to get even sound coming out before I hit mute, so I'm going to hope that they are hearing it. Yeah. Okay, we have 7 minutes.
It started, mine started.
Yeah, I'm not going to touch anything. Well, here's turn Randy's mic. I'll tell you the news for No, there was somebody on here saying turn Randy's mic off. It said turn Randy's mic off, but nobody else is saying anything, so we're going to assume that they are hearing this.
Okay, so Randy and Heidi, you'll need to turn that microphone back on at your computer. I'm sorry, by clicking on the talk button, that's how you turn it back on. There you go.
So I hope in this virtual way that we're working, I hope that you enjoyed that video. And, you know, I was going to talk about a couple of other things, such as, you know, the work that we've done in terms of not just teacher preparation, but teacher evaluation, and the other work that we've done in terms of Common Core. But let me, you know, because in one keynote, you can't talk about all the issues in education. But I do want, before I close, to talk about something that is very troubling to me and troubling to our members. And of course, I just saw a comment. So of course, if we want to do this in terms of question and answers, I'd love to talk about teacher evaluation. We've been working on it for several years now. But let me talk about the fixation on standardized testing and test prep. And that is, obviously, what we teach is really important, and what kids learn is really important. And testing has a role in that, and data clearly has a role in informing our instruction. But in the United States of America, there is too much of a fixation on standardized testing and test prep as opposed to a fixation on teaching and learning. And just like we have to be working on a balanced approach to our fiscal issues, particularly after austerity, you cannot keep cutting your way to prosperity. That doesn't work. You cannot test your way to a great workforce. We have to test our way to a great citizenry. We have to teach our way to that, and kids have to really learn their way to that and have the confidence in that. I was a social studies teacher. When I think about the times when I thought my students learned the most, it certainly wasn't when we were intensely preparing for standardized tests. That was a piece of it, and people have to learn how to prepare, but that wasn't when I would say my kids were most joyous about learning. My students were most joyous when they, even though they worked incredibly hard, when they engaged in project-based learning, when they worked in teams and wrestled with complex topics, such as, frankly, the decision that the United States of America made to drop an atomic bomb on Japan during World War II. These are the kinds of education experiences that excite students and teachers alike, when they're really engaged in all sides of a debate, when they really understand all sides of the debate, when they can actually argue that which they don't believe. That's different than preparing kids for the test. And if we want to actually ensure that kids are actually able to have the joy of learning, be able to critically think, we actually have to fight this constant fixation on testing, a fixation that in one district, I was told just a couple of weeks ago that they have already had 20,000 pre-tests and tests for 4,000 kids in the span of 2 months. You think about how much time they are not actually focused on teaching and learning. In another district, I was told, I saw it with my own eyes, kids in 5th grade had not been exposed to science yet because of too much focus on the subjects that were being tested, English and mathematics. We know that assessments are an important tool, and proper accountability is extremely important, but we have to have a balance, and right now the balance between teaching and testing is out of whack, and the excessive emphasis on testing and test prep have hurt our efforts to provide students with a well-rounded education. So what we've done at the AFT is we've created a petition calling for the end of America's fixation on high-stakes testing. Not the end of testing, but the fixation on high-stakes testing. And thousands of educators, parents, and community members have signed a petition which called for the United States to restore the balance to public education by prioritizing high-quality instruction informed by appropriate and useful tests. The bottom line is this, as I'm talking about public education and connecting with communities. Educators are amazing people. Educators try to make a difference in the lives of kids every single day. Educators don't go into our profession to be rich. They go into our profession because they understand that connection with kids can create the embers, can create the light, can create the next President of the United States, the next Nobel Peace Prize winner, the next person who actually creates the next internet, the next global virtual society that we're in. But we can't do this alone. We have to work with community, and we have to have community as part of us, parents, educators, together, making schools the center of community and making community, or ensuring that community shares the responsibility of educating and nourishing our next generation of children. That is what we believe and think about when we think about public education. Keeping the public in public schools, keeping communities around public schools, thinking about public schools and the kids that we educate, all the kids that we educate, as vital, important, precious resources who must be nourished and supported in every which way in order for us to not only help them enable opportunity and help them have the knowledge and skills they need for the future that they find, but also enable them to ensure that our world, our communities, are the civic enterprises we need them to be for a safe, a peaceful, and a prosperous world. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thanks.
Thank you, Randy. I'm hoping you might have a minute or two to answer a couple of questions that we received. We certainly had a lot of chatter when you started talking about testing. But prior to that, there was an interesting question, too, about scalability. How do we bring these best practices to scale? You know, we see them, we see the pockets of excellence, but how do we bring them up?
Well, first, this is part of the reason that we actually need school systems as opposed to systems of schools. And ultimately, I'm not talking about school systems that have too much bureaucracy, that have too much top-down barking at teachers. I'm talking about making sure that when we see things that work, there are certain, you unpack it, and there are certain levers that you can actually replicate. So that's why I started with things like the things we see in high performing countries. Teacher preparation is something that can be replicated. And whether it's preparation before somebody becomes a teacher or whether it is the ongoing preparation, it may look different, but components of it are similar. And so they have to be sustained in places and they have to be scaled in other places. And part of the way you sustain it is through collaboration. If collaboration is a value, then what happens is it's not simply a charismatic leader that actually puts a school together. It is that that school stays together as a great place with the next leaders. And so collaboration is a value that if it's embedded in schooling, you can get to both sustainability and scalability. In terms of curriculum, the same thing. If you have good practices, you start building on it. The worst thing to do is say something is really important this year, and then next year you take it away and put something else in. Teachers used to call that the fad of the month, or the curriculum of the year. So there are ways of doing this, but if we can't do it alone, and that's why we need school systems rather than systems of schools.
And one more question, looking at assessments, and we know that there's this heavy focus on summative assessments, standardized tests. Has AFT looked at, or what does it consider 21st century assessments, what they should look like? What does the assessment program look like?
Okay, that is the person who's going to be able to answer that in 3.5 nanoseconds will be the next person that Pearson hires for and will become a gazillionaire. The reason I say it so like that is because I think that there's a wrestling to standardization as opposed to really thinking about the authentic assessments we need and the multiple assessments we need to ensure that we haven't just taught it, but kids have learned it. And so one of the things I've started to become really big on is project-based instruction. And so if someone gave me and said, if there's one thing you could do to help all kids, I would say that let's make sure, and first I would say it can't just be one thing, but an effective strategy would be ensuring that every child had an opportunity to work in teams with others on a project that required the student to actually go through several different steps of design to completion. And whether that project was something like I taught, which was debate with others in a competition on civics, so that our teams actually had to be prepared together on several different questions, and they would debate others, so they had to actually learn it, work with each other, and have the presentation skills to debate other teams, or whether it is one of the STEM projects like robotics, where they work as a team to create a robot and then compete with others as well. Or maybe it is a dozen other projects that other people can think of. But it is finding a way that kids actually go from start to finish on a project with each other, which requires critical thinking skills and applying knowledge skills. And then the issue becomes, okay, how do you assess that? So there are different pieces that you would assess, but it would also be assessing how confident the students have been in their presentation skills, how well kids actually have worked together. Those are different kinds of assessments from anything that I've seen down the road right now, with one exception. The portfolio assessment folks in New York and other places do this very well, and they know how to assess it very well. My point in giving this long-winded answer is that we have to have multiple measures and indications of teaching and learning, and multiple kinds of assessments, some of which have to be standard, but many of which will not be.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And I think that we are all set then, and I want to thank everybody for joining us. And check out sharemylesson.com, please, and register today. This has been recorded, so it will be available for, and also make sure that you follow Randi on Twitter. You will be glad that you did. So definitely follow Randi on Twitter. And thank you all very much, and enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thanks, Randi. Thanks, Heidi. So before we turn off the recording, let's have somebody put Randi's Twitter handle into the chat. And again, we've put the link to the video, and we've put the link to the website in the chat as well, and those are available. Those will be available in the recording. Thanks, everybody. Coming up the next hour, we have a whole new set of sessions. Again, we're at the end of day 3, closing in on the end of day 3 at the Global Education Conference. We sure have appreciated your attendance. Take care now, and bye.